Good afternoon and welcome to today's Tropics for May 16th, 2020. Please note I'm not a meteorologist and this video is just a collection of my thoughts and opinions for the storms I'm talking about. And for any decision making, please consult the National Hurricane Center or your local officials. Today I am looking at Invest 90L, which isn't going to be an invest very long because it is organized considerably in the past day or so and is now going to be likely a subtropical or tropical depression. The National Hurricane Center has actually said that has a 100% chance of forming in the next 2 days or 48 hours. And this is basically a technicality. That means it's just going to have advisories at the next advisory time, which is 5 o'clock Eastern Time. So this will likely be a subtropical depression or tropical depression that the National Hurricane Center has hinted at and it looks like they will be keeping it at 30 knots for the first advisory. As well, I'm looking at Tropical Storm Amphan. This has been also organizing and is now a tropical storm. I will be talking about this storm after Invest 90L. So again, Invest 90L is considerably organized and has also reformed as expected from that weakening low pressure that is now pretty much gone. And this one has a supportive convection, and while it isn't quite as concentrated as you'd usually see in a tropical cyclone, it is still classifiable through looking at the data from the recon mission that was in the storm just earlier. There's another one coming soon to investigate it, but evidently there was enough data in that one mission that the NHC decided that they should start advisories on this storm. As always, the water vapor imagery provides a good look at what's going on around the storm, such as upper level troughs or just seeing what's around, or seeing mid-level moisture areas, like for example this area of mid-level moisture here that is basically this convection here that reformed in the last one that was here this morning actually pretty much decayed because it was slightly further to the south, so it was in this drier air, and then obviously it struggled and eventually it decayed with this newer generally shallow convection, but still convection forming a bit to the north, and is able to take advantage of that nose of moister air in the mid levels, and that means it has both diverging air at upper levels, and it also has moister air to work with. As you can see, there is still that upper trough, and 90L and its general center is situated near the trough axis, which means that the shear that you see with upper level troughs and what I was experiencing the other day is no longer really with it because the flow is much calmer, and also it is able to take advantage of the exit region of that jet area, which means it has upper level divergence, which has been able to actually support this convection, which has tightened the vortex enough for it to become an actual bona fide subtropical or tropical cyclone. Looking at that recon mission that I was mentioning earlier, you can see that there's two areas here that basically are vortex data messages, and these show that there was a trackable low in the past two ones, and now this is a bit of an older image. It's almost an hour old now, and the plane is now headed back to its base, but the data it did get shows that there is a low here, and it's tracking to the northeast as 90L has been expected to do. So that means it's likely the same low, and it has actually consolidated enough to become a tropical or subtropical cyclone in the next couple of hours. Here's the latest one. It's 1,008 millibars. It's a bit stronger than the last one, but that might just be a differences in measuring it because it is just a 1 millibar difference, so it could just be slight fluxes in the measurements. And the winds that it measured were near the boundary of tropical storm force, but it looks like, based on the tropical weather outlook that National Hurricane Center issued, it will still be 30 knots and not quite a tropical storm, but there's a decent chance that it will become tropical storm force and acquire the name Arthur. Looking at the GFS analysis, so this is 12Z, it's the latest run. You can see that 200 millibar wind does have this upper trough that I was mentioning earlier, and you can see that it is around the axis of that upper trough, and you can obviously see why this is favorable, because it gets to take advantage of both this upper divergence with the wind speeding up aloft and also moving a bit out in direction. And both of these mean that you have areas of lower pressure there, so the air actually has to, since the air can't come in horizontally, it has to come from vertically, and that means you have rising air from below. So yeah, it means that there's more rising air, and then you have more convection that's fostered in this type of setup. In addition, it has a decent moisture pocket here, so that means it doesn't have to deal with as much dry air, and you might see the convection that comes with it is a bit more persistent than what we've seen the past couple of days with a less impressive moisture bubble and a weaker storm. Looking ahead, the GFS does intensify at 2 tropical storm force, as most models do. And actually, in the past day or so, the shortwave trough that was expected to catch it and move it more to the northeast, missing the coast, has actually trended to the south and west instead of the Ohio Valley. It's more around Kentucky, and as a result, that means Invest 90L can travel with the subtropical high flow a bit more, so it does come a bit more to the west, and that west trend has happened. And while the GFS is a bit more to the west than, or is a bit more of an outlier to the west than the other models, this is a possible scenario that you do have a landfall on the outer banks around there of North Carolina. And since it is so much closer to the coast in this scenario, it's more likely that we will see some impacts in near the coast, or at least near the coast, possibly a bit inland, with this moisture pocket nosing in and providing some rain to those coastal areas. But it really depends how far west it is and if it makes landfall, or how, just depending on the track, we will see impacts possibly in some of the mid-Atlantic. But the impacts shouldn't be major. As you can see, 90L will not be a strong storm. It is likely not to even hit hurricane force, so it's likely going to be a tropical storm force, a cyclone, and unless it goes even further west than GFS, the land areas probably won't see the strongest winds, as it'll be traveling to the northeast, and that means the strongest winds are usually on the right front quadrant, so that is offshore, and in that case you wouldn't see the strongest winds actually hit the coast. So the main impact here is maybe some higher surf due to the wind kind of mixing up the waves and making them a bit higher in height, and also some rain as a result of this moisture bubble coming inland. Otherwise, there shouldn't be major effects from 90L, like stronger storms in closer to the peak of the season. Next, I'm looking at Tropical Storm Amphan, which curiously shows up as Tropical Storm 1 in the current data for it. I'm not too sure, but I guess it wasn't officially named at this time. But it does have the name now from the JTWC as Amphan. It also has it as 40 knots. In my opinion, which is completely unofficial, it is probably likely stronger than that because it has a pretty decent structure, and it also has extremely deep convection here, with minimums actually being less than negative 80 degrees Celsius. So this is very, very strong convection. and very intense thunderstorms, and it's likely there's at least some pockets of wind that are stronger than 40 knots in here. Looking at the water vapor, you can just see how expansive Amphan is right now. This is just its CDO. You also have some banding out here, and this just absolutely massive area of moisture that basically covers this entire image almost, except for the top areas, and also has very powerful outflow. So obviously shear is not going to be a problem for this storm. Shear will not be a problem. Has extremely strong outflow, and this warming from the outflow will actually be able to cause a strong ridge to form in this area, which might even be able to nudge the jet stream that comes through Asia a bit to the north as a result of this very strong outflow. And that will also cause some interactions with the extra tropics. And as a result of that, Amphan will be very shielded from any shear, so it will not have to deal with that pretty much any time in its life cycle until it makes landfall. And also, the waters are very warm in this part of the Bay of Bengal. They're in the lower 30s Celsius or upper 80s or even 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So that will be able to fuel these very deep thunderstorms and provide a lot of cape for intense updrafts such as this one, with values around even negative 90 degrees Celsius, which is extremely intense and just shows how warm that water is. However, the conditions won't be quite perfect for it, luckily, because this is hitting a vulnerable area. Since Amphan is so large, that means it's going to have to actually intensify a lot more and have a lot lower pressure to get the same wind increase for a smaller storm. So that means it has to have more time to intensify, and that might stunt some of the rapid intensification that is possible in this type of setup. And also, Amphan is so large that that circulation butts into India a bit, and that might actually draw some dry air into the circulation. That might also stunt some of the rapid intensification that's possible with this storm. So hopefully it doesn't. It gets kind of kneecapped by that and doesn't really rapidly intensify, as some models like the HWRF have been saying, that get it up to even 900 millibars, even though it is an outlier that isn't impossible, and that would be a very bad situation indeed. The latest GFS run, again at 12Z today, so that latest run does actually show Amphan having a bit of trouble with that drier air, sometimes showing a bit getting into the core and keeping it a bit weaker, so it only really bottoms out in the 960 millibar range, which is better than it was showing the other day, with it being like 30 to 40 millibars more intense, which would be absolutely catastrophic if it moved into this region of Bangladesh. Still, even with this weakening, it would still be a bad situation for it to come in at this strength, and also with this sort of track coming right into central Bangladesh, which again funnels a lot of wind into the Ganges Delta, which is, as if you can't quite see, is kind of triangular in shape, which means that you're getting that water pushed into this smaller and smaller area, which means you have surge getting even larger. So you have a lot of vulnerable, very dense areas that could get flooded out by surge if this track does happen, even if it is weaker. So this is likely to be almost certain to be a very impactful storm. Even if it doesn't cause surge, it'll cause damage with the wind and rain that will come with it. But hopefully the surge doesn't also become a part of that equation. Otherwise, there isn't a whole ton of activity outside of these two storms. There is Vongfang, which is starting to move away from the Philippines, which is pretty much dissipated by now with all that land interaction that has robbed it of its energy source, and also Invest 97W, which isn't doing all that much at this point. If you have any criticism or questions or comments about my video, please let me know, and thank you for watching.